Imagine a tiny speck in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, barely 70 square kilometers of chalky land ringed by a deep blue sea. That is Nauru, the world's smallest sovereign nation after Vatican City and Monaco, a coral chunk turned atoll that for decades gleamed thanks to the white marble of its phosphate deposits. But that extractive splendor is history. Today, Nauru is remembered as the most obese island on the planet, and as a place no one visits, save for a handful of curious travelers and officials who arrive on half-empty planes. Yet in its almost mystical solitude, a vibrant social life simmers, centered on the hospitality of its women, famous and feared for the unstoppable energy they unleash when they meet tourists. Nauru was settled more than 3,000 years ago by migrants from the Caroline Islands and Melanesia. For them, the coral ground offered plentiful fish, seabirds, and tropical fruit. For generations they lived in harmony with nature, moving among 13 villages that shared the atoll's heart. Everything changed in the late 19th century, when colonial powers set their sights on phosphate, a fertilizer coveted the world over. Under German rule, then Australian and even British administration, the island became a well of wealth. Nigerians, Filipinos, and Europeans landed as laborers, and the tons of phosphate shipped out daily made Nauru for a few years one of the countries with the highest per capita income on Earth. That abundance proved fleeting. From the 1970s onward, the deposits began to run dry, leaving behind a moonscape of flooded pits, abandoned embankments, and African heat in the middle of the Pacific. The small population, no more than 11,000 people, suddenly faced a fiscal elephant. A state drowning in debt and an urgent need to reinvent itself. It was then that a problem previously overlooked gained force: massive obesity. Today, more than 70% of Nauruan adults suffer from morbid obesity. The causes are many: the replacement of a traditional diet of fish and local fruit with cheap imports of processed food, the sedentary lifestyle caused by the lack of public spaces reclaimed after mining, and a culture shaped by decades in which excess signified social status. Fried chicken, sugary soft drinks, and factory bread shipped from Australia or Southeast Asia became staples in every household. At the same time, generous state subsidies, once granted simply for being a Nauruan citizen, rewarded inactivity, and with them came abundant leisure. But Nauru is not only a public health tragedy, it is also a stage where feminine identity has found an explosive outlet. On an island so small, intimate communities know one another in minute detail: who married whom, who lands the best catch, who owns the finest house, or the fattest bank account. And when tourists arrive, usually NGO workers, government agency staff, or marine scientists, they are greeted with particular fascination by local women. Aware of how rare a foreign visitor is, those women unleash a mix of curiosity, flirtation, and cultural pride that no one forgets. From dawn they can be seen walking the coastal roads in eye-catching outfits, patterned perios paired with English-language T-shirts, shell earrings, and zigzag necklaces. Their steps are slow and assured, matching the rhythm of a self-esteem that defies cracked roads, rusty power poles, and unfinished concrete houses. At roadside stalls built atop old barrels they sell fresh fruit, papaya, mango, banana, haggling with visitors while teaching them the Nauruan word for delicious, o. The first encounter often happens over a round of spicy chicken or a canned soda, sipped in the shade of a coconut tree. Between swigs, conversation turns to family, to the Nauruan diaspora, living in Australia, Fiji, or Kiribati, and to the hunt for work. Some young women, smartphones in hand, show photos of their university courses in Brisbane or of their COVID-19 vaccinations, while others voice hopes of returning to the old quarries one day, not as phosphate workers, but as part of a sustainable tourism project. For one of the few doors that opened after mining's decline was an attempt to lure tourists sport fishing, dives alongside shipwrecks, and 4x4 safaris through inland lagoons. The problem is that the island is so ill-prepared: only one hotel with 50 rooms, 2 petrol stations, and a single decent restaurant, that scarcely anyone comes of their own free will. Thus Nauruan women have learnt to create welcoming spaces within their intimate radius. Invitations to their homes, demonstrations of traditional dances like the taobu, choral singing sessions, and at times private parties where laughter and toasts with local mango beer stretch past midday. During such evenings, the visitor discovers another side of the island: community spirit. There is none of the social misery seen in other island nations. Life revolves around the extended family, where the grandmother holds moral authority, the aunt organizes celebrations, and young cousins teach English, Instagram codes, and seduction tips picked up from Western series. Here, sexual taboo means little. Women speak openly about their wish to experiment, to see how much they can earn by bargaining with foreigners, to be admired. They are driven by a genuine sense of power, even though they know theirs is the least visited island in the world. That informal empowerment sometimes collides with governmental reality. Nauru is also the focus of political and human rights controversies. Since the decade of the 2000s, the country has served as a warehouse for refugees Australia does not want on its soil. Detention facilities for asylum seekers have sparked tension and international protest. Among electrified fences and walls watched by police on Yarran's outskirts, there is no place for visiting women, only for security staff and male refugees. That brutal contrast between a picturesque island where obesity reigns and a detention base where dignity falters sets the pulse of contemporary life on the atoll. All the while, Nauruan women navigate a sea of contradictory expectations. They must protect their family's health, fighting epidemics of diabetes, hypercholesterolemia, and cardiovascular disease, while maintaining the social dynamism that so attracts the few visitors. Some have started small morning exercise clubs, walks around the lagoon, adapted Zumba classes and cycling groups on bikes lent by a ministry program. Others lead urban agriculture ventures, planting leafy green gardens beside their homes to combat malnutrition hidden beneath obesity. Yet the biggest challenge remains economic conversion. Emerging businesswomen are exploring ecotourism, guided walks through ancient phosphate craters, kayak routes in restored mangroves, and visits to an experimental nursery where endemic flora fights to take root again. With each group of tourists, they present themselves as guides, storytellers, and ambassadors of Nauruan spirit, a blend of resilience, warmth, and resolve. Australian traveller Emily Watson, one of the few visitors who returned for a second time, puts it this way: "I had never seen anything like it. Those women taught me to understand the island not as a place of idyllic beaches, but as a living being that throbs between phosphate and palms, between crisis and laughter, bearing a wisdom born only when you survive both excess and neglect." We have crossed the geography of historic abundance, the tragedy of obesity, and the social rebirth led by Nauru's women. We have seen how they turn the island's forgotten solitude into a springboard for power, wielding hospitality as a weapon and body pride as resistance. But Nauru is a land of contrasts, where tropical heat shares ground with the bureaucratic chill of detention centres, and where a hostess's smile may mask the harsh reality of a system seeking a new path. Now let us explore how these women forge alliances with the outside world, manage the island's scarce tourist resources, and confront the task of saving their community's health without losing the spark that makes them crazy for tourists. At daybreak, when apricot light brushes the sky over Nauru's central lagoon, a group of women gathers in the tiny office of the Community Guides Association. There, over paper maps that crackle as they unfold, they sketch routes to the island's most secret corners: abandoned phosphate craters, mangroves struggling to revive beside the old desalination plant, paths beneath the Anabar dune that still preserve traces of ancient quarries. They are volunteer guides, armed with intimate knowledge of the atoll and a passion for showing Nauru's true face. They wear no uniform and earn no fixed wage. Their motivation is pride in their land and the desire to open doors for their families. Each tourist route, an almost ironic term when visitor numbers barely reach a few hundred a year, is designed to convey a story of transformation. The walk through the old Lanche crater is no mere geology field trip. It is a metaphor for boom and bust, for the open wound in the landscape and the possibility of regeneration. As they advance, the guides recount anecdotes of miners who came to Nauru from India and Oceania, sharing their work songs and hopes of a prosperous tomorrow. Tourists listen, captivated, as those promises lie buried under tons of red earth, and in place of phosphate, hibiscus and guava seeds now sprout. From the withered quarries rises one of the island's boldest projects, the community fish farm. Led by local biologist Tara Iyer, the initiative uses fresh water flooding certain craters to raise tilapia and freshwater prawns. Village women apply aquaponics, systems that integrate fish and plants in a sustainable cycle, and have already exported part of their output to Kiribati and Tuvalu. Beyond economic value, the farm symbolizes the power to turn a destructive legacy into a source of life. Tourists who take part in the harvest learn to feed the fish, collect water samples, and, at day's end, enjoy ceviche made with local ingredients. For many, this urban fisherman experience is as revelatory as any African safari. Not every alliance is forged with foreigners. Within Nauru, a small circle of local investors, businesswomen and professionals from the diaspora, has created the Women's Development Fund. With contributions from Australia, New Zealand and businesses operating on the atoll, the fund finances micro-loans for projects run exclusively by women, sewing workshops turning out bags from recycled fabric, artisanal bakeries incorporating regional fruit, and soap-making shops using coconut oil and phosphate ash. Each entrepreneur receives accounting advice, digital marketing classes, and, above all, a mentor on the council who guides her through the first year of operation. In this way, the local economy diversifies while dependence on cheap imports, once flooding every shopping bag, shrinks. Meanwhile, a team of volunteer doctors has transformed Yaran's small hospital into a pioneering healthcare center in the Pacific. Under Kenyan-American physician Miriam Kilonzo, telemedicine now links Nauru to specialists in Brisbane. The real breakthrough, however, is the Community Nutrition Unit, where local and foreign nutritionists design menus suited to cultural reality. Sun-dried fish paired with native tubers and hydroponic vegetables grown in rooftop greenhouses. Healthy cooking workshops teach mothers and grandmothers how to keep gastronomic riches without lapsing into sugar and fat excesses. The hospital, once overwhelmed by childhood diabetes cases, has seen in 2 years a significant drop in new diagnoses among children younger than 15. Art, too, finds its transformative space. In Iwo's community gallery, Nauruan painter Shem Fallon has created a mural series portraying island life before and after phosphate. Vibrant colors and dynamic strokes show women fishing with handmade nets, children wandering coral paths, elderly women weaving mats in coconut shade. The murals have become pilgrimage spots for Asian influencers who come to capture each image. Fallon uses tourism as cultural outreach. She sells prints, runs painting workshops for tourists, and gives school talks on art as a motor of social change. Politically, Nauru shows signs of opening. In the latest parliamentary session, 2 women were elected for the first time in decades, standing for the Gender Equity Movement, an organization born from the union of several local NGOs. Their bills include land inheritance reform, so women may own family plots, creation of a public childcare program to support working mothers, and compulsory gender studies in school curricula. Though they face resistance from conservative sectors, their presence in Parliament marks a decisive step. The female voice is no longer confined to the private sphere. On the western coast, a group of young environmentalists has driven the installation of wind turbines and solar panels that now supply half the island's energy demand. Headed by electrical engineer Maureen Gabona, these initiatives give Nauru the potential to become a renewable energy model in the Pacific. A scholarship program has also been launched so secondary school girls can study STEM careers in Australia, with a commitment to return and work on sustainable development projects. Challenges persist, of course. Climate change threatens to raise sea levels, jeopardize the few sandy beaches, and salinize underground aquifers. Nauruan women know this and have formed a climate adaptation committee that collaborates with international scientists to design living coral barriers and urban drainage systems. They also promote resilient farming practices, cultivating salt-tolerant taro varieties and replanting native species to stabilize the soil. The committee organizes mangrove planting ceremonies where girls recite poems about the sea and coconuts while elders bless the land with ancestral songs. In every initiative, in every project, the same determination pulses to turn the least visited and most obese island on the planet into a laboratory of social innovation led by women. From the peaks where phosphate once throbbed to the sunsets mirrored in the lagoon, the message is clear. Nauru's true wealth lies not in its mineral past, but in its inhabitants' ability to reinvent themselves with creativity, solidarity, and courage. Through those feminine voices, those hands weaving the future, those hearts beating to the rhythm of resilience, Nauru is writing its second story. In that story, any tourist who crosses the atoll will receive not cheap souvenirs but living lessons in cultural resistance, conscious hospitality, and the transformative power that women's leadership can unleash in the world's remotest corner. In Nauru, humid heat settles on the skin like a blanket, and afternoon silence is broken only by cicadas' song or the distant rumble of a motorbike along the narrow ring road. Yet there is a different energy when local and visitor eyes meet. For many island women, the arrival of tourists, though scarce, means more than mere novelty. It is a spark of excitement in a place where routine can grow monotonous and romantic possibilities are few. In a country of fewer than 10,000 inhabitants, where everyone knows each other by name, nickname, or kinship, the dating pool is incredibly limited. Relationships weave through extended families, and it is not unusual for young people to find themselves seeing someone who has already dated a cousin, a neighbor, or a friend. In that context, the arrival of a foreigner feels exotic, fresh, unknown, and, in many cases, desirable. This is not just a tropical cliché. On Anibare's beaches or in the few bars of the Menon Hotel, some tourists discover, almost in amazement, that women approach them with a blend of flirting and genuine curiosity. Open smiles, simple questions in broken English, and an invitation to watch the sunset from the jetty or share a cold Australian import beer. To outsiders, this contact may seem spontaneous and casual, but for many Nauruan women these interactions are a way to step, even briefly, outside the social bubble where everything is already said and done. Interestingly, the phenomenon is not necessarily tied to economic interest, as happens in other Pacific destinations. In Nauru, fascination with foreigners, particularly men, stems more from admiration, cultural desire, and the need for new experiences. Television, the internet, and social media have built an almost mythical image of the outsider. Free, fun, different. And although many young women already access global content, meeting someone in the flesh has a different impact. It is a chance to measure their own aspirations against a tangible reality, not an Instagram filter. Some women say that going out with tourists makes them feel seen in a new way. In their words, the men here already see you as just another aunt. But visitors lacking that shared story and daily weight tend to look with fresh eyes. That gaze, curious, surprised, praising, acts as a different mirror, and many women discover themselves more confident, more flirtatious, more ready to live something unexpected. Traveler forums circulate stories about Nauru that range from anecdotal to unbelievable. Some people claim women approach quickly, invite visitors home without hesitation, and even seek brief relationships fully aware that they are fleeting. Yet this image can be misleading, for behind the open gesture often lies a deeper story: loneliness, the search for connection, or even a protest against cultural codes that still privilege male control and sexual discretion. A young Nauruan, interviewed anonymously for a study on interpersonal relationships in microstates, confessed, "Here it is hard to love. If you fall for someone from the village, everyone finds out. If you fight, if you reconcile, everyone comments. And if you're with someone who has had a partner before, there is always gossip. With a tourist, it's different. They don't judge you, they don't know you, you can be yourself." In this setting, tourism acts not only as an economic engine but as an emotional catalyst. Some women have had relationships with foreigners that lasted as long as a tide, intense, brief, unforgettable. In other cases, longer bonds have formed. At least half a dozen marriages are known between Nauruan women and European or Australian men who found the island through work or chance. Some of these couples live now in Brisbane, others in Auckland, and a few chose to stay in Nauru. In every case, love sprang from mutual surprise, the men fascinated by a strong feminine culture, the women seduced by a promise of change. It is important to note that Nauru has no organized sex industry as found elsewhere. The island is too small, social scrutiny too intense, and the informal economy too regulated for such an industry to thrive. What happens between tourists and local women is usually consensual, spontaneous, and emotional. Even so, tensions arise. Some local men, especially younger ones, have begun expressing discomfort at what they see as loss of interest from their female peers. Internal social media debates have emerged about cultural uprooting and the supposed risk that new generations will lose their sense of identity. In response, several women have formed a collective called NAURU Sisters Free, promoting emotional autonomy and freedom of romantic choice. They clarify that they do not aim to encourage sex tourism, but to defend the right to fall in love without prejudice. In their open-air meetings beneath pandanus shade, they share experiences, read poetry, discuss toxic relationships, and screen films where heroines escape closed contexts in search of freedom. Some visiting female tourists who have attended these gatherings say they felt a universal feminine connection, as if geographical borders dissolved in the shared experience of desire and independence. Meanwhile, local tourism authorities have begun capitalizing on this emotional dimension of travel. Immersive experiences now include dinners with local families, cooking workshops led by women, and even cultural festivals where visitors can join ancestral dances and rituals. These spaces aim not only to entertain tourists but to foster genuine human dialogue. Women, always at the forefront, serve as hosts, storytellers, and ambassadors of an island that, though small, vibrates with intense emotion. Not everything revolves around romance. Many female visitors, particularly Europeans and Latin Americans, say they have felt a warm, sincere welcome in Nauru without the harassment or pressure sometimes found in other tropical destinations. The local women's community shows natural solidarity and hospitality that transcends tourism. Recipes are exchanged, motherhood stories shared, and friendships forged that outlast the trip. Some visitors have returned not for love, but for the feeling of having found a place where femininity is lived with strength, joy, and no filters. In the end, the phenomenon of Nauruan women drawn to tourists is neither exotic mystery nor sensationalist tale. It is the manifestation of a universal human need to be seen, to be chosen, to feel that there are still paths to discover. In a place where time seems motionless and social boundaries can tighten like a fishing net, the visitor becomes a symbol of possibility, an open door to the unexpected. Thus, on a tiny island lost in the Pacific, women keep charting their own routes of desire and freedom, knowing that every tourist who arrives may become a short story or a lingering sigh, but above all an opportunity to see themselves through different eyes. Far from the spotlights, Nauru continues its existence in the penumbra of the world map, a well-kept secret in the Pacific. There are no shopping malls, no highways, no buzzing nightlife, nor are there waves of tourists, influencers, or backpackers flooding the streets. And perhaps for that very reason the island possesses a unique, almost hypnotic magnetism that seems to stop time for anyone bold enough to know it. In this final look at Nauru, beyond its charming women and demographic singularity, a country shaped by extremes is revealed. It is a paradise fenced by scars. The past wealth of phosphate left marks on its landscape and collective soul. Empty mines gape like open wounds, reminding all of sudden bonanza and abrupt decay. Yet within that apparent decline, a quiet resilience blooms, a way of life untouched by the modern world's speed. Children still play barefoot by the sea, adults gather in family circles at dusk, and elders tell stories of times when the ocean was the only calendar. Instead of gazing anxiously toward the future, many inhabitants cling to the present with ancestral calm. There is no hurry here, no constant need to produce to feel useful. Life is measured in sunsets, in shared laughter, in unhurried glances. On this island, where the small becomes immense, the relationship with foreigners takes on a spiritual dimension. The tourist is not just a visitor, but an eruption into a nearly closed world, a carrier of stories, ideas, new ways to love, dress, think. Unlike other destinations where tourism transforms entire cultures, Nauru seems to absorb the foreign without losing its essence, like a reef that adapts to the tide yet never sinks. That capacity to assimilate the external without diluting the internal is part of Nauru's mystery. Here desire is lived without guilt, hospitality is not faked, and solitude is not sadness but space for reflection. Women who enchant visitors do so not out of need or spectacle but from a vital impulse toward human connection. Men who fall in love with this land often cannot explain it. They simply feel that something in Nauru touches them deeply. Despite structural challenges, economic dependence on the Australian government, resource scarcity, isolation, Nauru endures with dignity, with every wave that kisses its coral shores, every song sung in Nauru, and every sincere gesture toward a stranger. The island reaffirms itself as an emotional refuge for anyone seeking more than tourism, seeking truth. It is no accident that some travelers return again and again. Nauru offers no luxury, no extreme adventures, no selfie-worthy waterfalls. It offers something rarer: authenticity. It offers the chance to witness a world without artifices, where warmth comes not only from the climate but from the people's souls, where gazes are deep because they arise from silence, not noise. And so, as this narrative journey ends, we understand why the most obese, least visited, most forgotten island in conventional tourism becomes, for some, the place where they found meaning, desire, and redemption. In Nauru, life does not shout, it whispers, and whoever knows how to listen never forgets it.